If you will, turn with me over to Jeremiah chapter 31. We'll be looking at a few passages there this morning. In Luke 22, verse 20, we read, "And likewise he took the cup after they had eaten, saying, 'This cup that is poured out for you is the new covenant in my blood.'" And I wanted to take a moment this morning and talk about this new covenant. Think of all the covenants that were made in the Old Testament. Think of who they were made to. Men of God, men of faith, men who we look up to, men who the Jewish nation looked up to and has for centuries. We think about Moses and the covenant after the flood of the rainbow and what that promise meant. We think of the three promises made to Abraham and to his descendants. These covenants were great. These covenants were bold. And these covenants were given directly from God to those recipients. And what's so fascinating to me this morning is that we're one of these great people in the Bible where God has directly looked at us and said, here's my covenant with you. Here's my new covenant that I am extending to each and every one of us. And so let's talk about this for a second, this new covenant. Why do we need a new covenant? Let's look in 31 and 32 of Jeremiah chapter 31. "Behold, the days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah, not like the covenant that I made with their fathers on the day when I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, my covenant that they broke, though I was their husband, declares the Lord." What did the Lord want from the people of Israel? I would contend it's no different than it is today. There's a covenant formula in the Bible, and it's on the surface very simple. I will be your God, and you will be my people. This is repeated over 51 times from Genesis through the wandering in the wilderness to the conquering of Canaan. You see it in Ezekiel. You see it in the rest of the prophets. You see it in the New Testament. You see it in Revelation. This covenant formula, I will be your God and you will be my people. What did he want from them? He wanted them to know him and to be obedient. This theme is found over and over. And what we read in Jeremiah just now is they couldn't hold up their end of the bargain. Why was a new covenant required? Well, I've curated a survey of all the covenants in the Old Testament, and we're going to walk through them all over the next hour. Not really. But it sure is interesting. Each one is interesting, and how it ties into this theme is so fascinating. It was hard not to go down these rabbit trails. But with the language we find in Jeremiah 31, I want to talk for a minute about Hosea. And what we see in the book of Hosea is God asked him to marry a whore. And this whore left him and went out and prostituted herself. And God says, marry her again and take care of her children. And this is the image of the new covenant. Mankind has continued to sin, and God has continued to forgive, continued to provide an avenue. And each week, we come and we look at this opportunity as Christians, as people who have taken a part of this covenant. And we realize we've made mistakes. I've made mistakes this week, this month. I've made mistakes as a father, as a friend, as a Christian brother. And we have a loving God who continues to extend that new covenant to us that we can think about every Sunday morning as we partake. Keep reading in Jeremiah in 33 and 34. "For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, declares the Lord. I will put my law within them, and I will write it on their hearts, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And no longer shall each one teach his neighbor and each his brother, saying, know the Lord, for they all shall know me, from the least of them to the greatest, declares the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquity, and I will remember their sin no more." Why a new covenant? because we broke it, because we tore down what had been given to us. And for our own well-being, God extends it again. I found in a few places that have said that in the early first century, it was Jewish custom that if a man saw a young lady that he wanted for his wife, he would have a marriage contract drawn up. And in it, he would list all the things to offer the girl that had caught his eye. The suitor would then take the woman a glass of wine, and if she drank it, she would indicate that she was accepting of his proposal. She didn't have to drink it. There was no obligation to do so. But once she had sipped the wine, the happy groom went to prepare the bridal chamber. This imagery probably had a lot to do with what was going on in the upper room on Passover. Christ extending this cup of wine, extending his blood, extending this new covenant, asking his apostles, asking Judas, who was intending to betray him, asking each and every one of us to take the cup. Just like the Israelites had broken that marriage covenant, he's offering a marriage covenant to us to enter in with him. And he would be our God, and we would be his people. Hebrews has a great essay on this idea of this new covenant. If you like to read while you think through the Lord's Supper, maybe turn your attention this morning somewhere between Hebrews 8 and Hebrews 10. But in chapter 15, we see some terms of this covenant. Therefore, he is the mediator of the new covenant, so that those who are called may receive the promised eternal inheritance, since a death has occurred that redeems them from the transgressions committed under the first covenant. And then in chapter 10, verse 16, this is the covenant I will make with them after those days, declares the Lord. I will put my law in their hearts and write them on their minds. I will remember their sins and their lawless deed no more. Where there is forgiveness of these, there is no longer any offering of sin. Of course, drawing on that passage we just saw in Jeremiah 31. He invites each of us to partake this morning. Looking in and how it's phrased in Matthew chapter 26, verse 27, he took the cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink of it, all of you.